Welcome to the House by the Azor podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be, I guess, Julie.
What's her name?
Well, I was thinking of how we're going to do it.
Derek!
Derek's not here, but we have Julie on.
Stepping up to the plate because Derek let us down.
Yes, he did not see the movies this week. And then Sean is with us, of course. But we are going to be talking about Dr. Sleep, the new Stephen King adaptation that is directed by Mike Flanagan, that is an adaptation of a Stephen King novel, Dr. Sleep, but then it's also following the Shining novel and then the Shining movie by Stanley Kubrick, which were divergent paths, and it kind of tries to weave everything all together. Mm-hmm. And I know we'll discuss during the review, like, how successfully we think it did that, or, you know, if it was distracting or anything like that.
Now, of course, Stephen King remakes, they always do pretty well. When was the last time there's been a new Stephen King property adapted to film?
Well, I mean, there's Gerald's Game.
I'm talking about theatrical release that has to worry about the box office. Like
The Mist?
The Mist, but when was that written?
Oh, that was released in 2008?
Yeah, but when was that written?
Oh, I'm not sure. I have to look it up.
But yeah, that's the first one that came to mind. And that didn't do great either, right?
Yeah.
The Mist didn't do well.
The ending is so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that did well either. It's,
Oh, you're looking.
I was going to look up IMDb or Box Office Mojo, but they've destroyed their site, so you can't even search by names anymore. But yeah, I mean, so his non-horror stuff, so Green Mile and Shawshank Redemption. Because what's
those
interesting,
were the 90s,
Yeah, those were the 90s, but even Shawshank Redemption was more appreciated after its release because in theaters it didn't do great, but then it ran on cable and syndication for forever, and then everybody loves it now because they finally got a chance to see it. So, I mean, you have, I'm trying to think of, the last original adaptation of a Stephen King.
Well, no, they did The Stand back in the 80s. Aren't they making The Stand?
I think they might be making
Dark Tower. Dark Tower was recent.
Dark Tower, yes. Yeah, that was recent.
Oh, okay.
And
that was not a success.
Yeah, that was a
critically.
Box office failure, but they're still moving forward with the TV series, I believe. But that was the one that had Matthew McConaughey and Idris Elba, and
that's right.
Came out past few years. And then, you had, I don't know, so, it was based on the novel, which had the TV adaptation in the 90s, and then the movie now, the theatrical release movie now.
And most people are excited because of Tim Curry as Pennywise, the new Pennywise. You know what I mean? It was like a character you get excited about. Mm-hmm. Pet Sematary, people love the film from the 80s. You know what I mean? All those films seem to do well at the box office, really well, some of them. And it's it's a shame that, it's okay, here's a new thing to watch, a new Stephen King thing to watch that people may love 20 years down the line, that people are we'll wait till streaming.
Yeah. Well, I think what happens with some of it is there could be Stephen King burnout because you've had so many of his works adapted recently, and people may have not been huge on Pet Sematary and It Chapter 2 and decided not to show up for this. Although I think, the other thing too is, they did some promotion as, very clearly trying to tie it to being the sequel to The Shining. But how much, social capital does The Shining have with modern day horror audiences that show up at the box office?
Teenagers,
Because teenagers are oh, it's a sequel to a movie that my parents like. That's lame. I mean, because there are definitely kids who are cinephiles, across all age
15 years old. But yeah, it's not in the public conscious, and it's not. And honestly, I watched the first trailer for Dr. Sleep. Did we give context that it's not doing well at the box office? So basically,
it made $14 million this weekend. And
how much of a budget?
Production budget somewhere between 50 and 60 million. So, not nothing. It's something where in order for it to be kind of a success, it probably, for it to go down the books as a full-on success they're happy about, it probably need to make 200 million worldwide, 150. So debuting to 14 million domestic, and I think 5 to 6 worldwide, or excluding the U.S. So a global debut of around 20 million is not what they were hoping. They were hoping for the U.S. debut to be like the 25.
Which is, timing may be a factor of getting released in November after, people getting hyped for it at Chapter 2. And it's like, I might go see 1 or 2 horror films in theaters this year and Marvel films and then rely on streaming and,
Yeah.
But so we'll talk about like some maybe just like maybe some plot spoilers, like not far into the movie, but just what the premise is basically. But what I was going to say is even though I watched like the first trailer, I had no clue what this film was about until I saw it. And I didn't really pay attention to the other trailers because I was already sold. I was skeptical of it being a sequel to The Shining because I love that film so much. I hadn't read the book before and I just recently started reading it and I probably was like, I don't know, 150 pages into it or something before this came out. But like that's probably my most watched horror film that's not a horror comedy is The Shining that I've watched the most times.
Well, and two, like what's funny, you think about The Shining, like how much cultural impact it had over the course of its lifetime. Twister, where they're at the drive-in watching The Shining. So like in another movie as a big blockbuster in the 90s, like over a decade later, it was still like a part of that. And then, spoiler for Ready Player One, but there was a Ready Player One sequence that played through The Shining.
Well, and the movie for our next podcast, One Cut of the Dead, did you notice the daughter is wearing a Shining t-shirt?
Oh, yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
I mean, it is permeated, pop culture, but I had no clue what this film was about really, other than Danny Torrance. It seemed like another girl had the shine, and that's all I knew.
Yeah.
Did you all watch later trailers or kind of know what you're walking into?
I did.
Did you know what you're walking into?
No, well, a little. So like did you see any trailers that had Rose the Hat?
Rebecca Ferguson?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Because
I think I was kind of like, when I saw her in the film, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot she was in this, but I don't know if I just read casting or saw the trailer.
Because I did. So admittedly, I haven't seen The Shining in years.
Yeah.
And like I wish I would have like watched it again recently, but I remember enough.
Well, I think it might play in its benefit to not immediately rewatch The Shining beforehand because then you kind of get more of a disconnect on the things that aren't exactly the same between the two. Because, it's not really spoiling, like it caters to the book and the movie because famously Stephen King was not a fan of the Stanley Kubrick movie because it changed a few things from his book and changed the focus and was very much a Kubrickian movie more so than just a straight adaptation of the material. And in the movie Dr. Sleep pays tribute to both, to the original movie and the book. And it's adapting this new book.
So as someone who does not remember a ton, I thought that it paid very, very good, loving fan service in moments in the film, which would make the fans go, oh,
that was me. I was like, this is like pandering to me, but I told my friend Arnie, I'm like, it's like, I love Star Wars, but like Force Awakens, like some of the stuff I was like, because I know what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
But it was like, if I went in that film, like my mind being blown just because I'm seeing the Millennium Falcon, you know what I mean? Like, but that's how this film was for me, where I was like, I don't care if they're pandering or whatever.
Yeah.
But it all made sense for the story. I feel like everything was woven in really well where it never felt like it was just there as like a reference or a wink and a nod. It was like, hey, we're kind of taking this like touchstone of horror and really just like, I don't know, reworking it almost and just blowing up the universe as far as like expanding it to such a huge degree where it's like, did they talk about this being a new trilogy? I thought I read something about it possibly like being more in the series. But anyway, the way this film is presented, and even I think, just the world they have now built, it easily could have multiple films if they want it. And not that it's like, feels like it's unfinished at all, but it kind of opens things up where The Shining, you watch that film and it closes the book, beginning and done. And I don't think that's a detriment to this film. It's almost like kind of the structure of this film and the nature of even like the gestation of it, what you like learn about this specific world is it just opened things up. So no matter how much closure there is, there could always be a wonder of like, what if there's more or something? You know what I mean? Like it didn't feel cheap, but it also just felt like it opened it up so much that was such an exciting thing to do that I never expected from a Shining sequel to do. Yeah,
like some of the stuff I just think I'll hold that for spoilers to discuss it. But I mean, Yeah, so the basic idea in this movie, just give you the threadbare description of the plot to go to know what it is.
And go see it if you are curious. Go see it without knowing anything other than what you already know.
Yeah, you go see it. I mean, I think I had seen parts of the trailers because you come in for previews before movies and they show it.
I watched the first one because I was skeptical. I was like, maybe I might not even, if the reviews aren't good, I might not go see this because I don't want anything to tarnish that. And not that it would make that film bad, but I was like, is this just is it just a ploy to...
Well, yeah, because I mean, in some of this stuff too, because we did the Pet Sematary remake, and we had said they changed some things seemingly just to change them, not really for any big reason aside from that. And it feels this is not redoing another movie because I don't think because you had the Shining TV series from the 90s with was it Steven Weber from Wings and stuff. And that has its fans, but that wasn't doing another movie of the same material because I think that'd be a big mistake. Because between The Shining, the original book, and the movie, there are differences in what characters live and die. There are characters who die in the movie that live in the book. And, this movie does some stuff similar because I've read this years ago. I had unfortunately read the synopsis for Dr. Sleep, back before there was even talk about it being a movie. Because I think the book came out in 2013, so I'd read that.
What I've heard is it's not a great book. Also,
because there are some people.
The general consensus is that's why there's some surprise at this film that so many people like it because they said, "Hey, I've read the book and the book's not that good. I didn't expect the movie to be good." And they made a great movie out of this, and a sequel to The Shining, and
Yeah, because just some basic things that for the original Shining. In the film, Stanley Kubrick's film The Shining, the actual Overlook Hotel is intact. They just leave it. In the book, it gets burned down. So in the Dr. Sleep book, there is no Overlook Hotel. There's just the land that it was on. So I think that alone would have been if they had just done a straight adaptation like that and somehow worked that into, it burned down in the meantime. I think that strips a lot of your third act away because going back to the hotel is what people want. If you're going to make it a sequel to The Shining, people want the freaking hotel. They don't want... now I do wonder how much was that impacted by the Ready Player One sequence having The Shining in it? Did that lessen people's excitement at seeing that again?
Maybe, but I didn't see Ready Player One. So
I don't think
it could have, but I think I don't know. Just talk about Mike Flanagan real quick. I have not watched all of Haunting on Hill House.
Oh, it's good. Do it.
I watched 2 or 3 episodes and I just got busy.
Oh, man.
But it seems to me that he really understands story.
Yes.
And that's what makes him so powerful right now, I think, as a filmmaker, because there's a lot of great filmmakers that do a good job of building up the scares and no shade on anybody, but James Wan, people love his films his horror films because he is good, good at telling ghost stories or having those scares and stuff. And he's great at those techniques. But for me, the story-wise on those films, I never cared. You know what I mean? I never really cared. Those films aren't really my thing. But Mike Flanagan, to be able to not only do this film so well and change so many things, it wasn't an easy task to decide what to change, what not to change, what to blend. But he also did Gerald's Game, which I heard should not have been a good movie. And he managed to adapt that book and made that into a good movie as well. He seems to have somebody that's such a strong storyteller that's not something that's some sort of flashy thing that's getting him attention, or he had some flashy gimmick from a movie that got him, he rose to fame really fast because he, did one movie that was interesting. He seems like he's somebody that's going to stay. He's going to stay around because he knows how to handle stories.
Well, I would like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And two, with The Shining, it was not about jump scares. It was not about... Because everybody complains about jump scares, but then they also complain when they don't have it. So it's one of these things where there's different sensibilities for what different generations find affecting or scary.
Well, to that point, though, if you enjoyed The Shining, you will enjoy this because The Shining did not have jump scares, and neither does this.
They had a couple.
I'm trying to remember.
I mean,
what were...
Okay, spoilers for The Shining. I mean, when Dick Halloran's coming down the hallway. When he comes back to the Overlook Hotel and Jack Nicholson just comes around the corner and puts an axe in his chest. That's basically, Jack Nicholson. I mean, it's not quite a jump scare, but, him it's not a jump scare, but it is almost the same effect of him like busting the axe through there. Like there's some visceral moments of like that make you stand up and notice it. But yeah, it did not rely on that. It was very much of a slow burn, and it built that moody atmosphere.
One, too, like a jump scare typically a lot of times is when the ones that are egregious is where it's a cat, it's your brother, sister, friend, whoever's standing there trying to spook you, whatever, that type of garbage. Like the original Shining, like you mentioned, like when Jack just hits him with the axe or whatever, that was still like built up to, it made sense and was part of the story.
And that was not in the book too. So it's like fans of the novel too would have been like, what the?
Yeah. It's like, I love that character.
But that also has got a lot of flack as far as him just being, as far as how I guess a black character was handled in that film, basically going there to save, going there to save a little white boy and then just getting killed.
Because the trope, the very frequent trope of a non-white person being the spiritual person that introduces the white protagonist to some spiritual element of the world and then is only there in service of them.
And I don't know if the novel, if it what race, but in Dr. Sleep, you can make a case of like there's almost two main protagonists, but the roles are flipped, and the Dick Halloran role is basically Danny Torrance, and it's a young black girl that is, you know what I mean? And she's kind of the hero too in some regards because we follow her a lot, but we also follow Danny Torrance probably the most in the film. It's mostly his story. It's a weird blend, like, and it does feel like a book because there's so much going on in it.
Well, and two, like a lot of it, I think, depends on what, because when you watch enough horror films and if you work on movies and stuff, like a lot of stuff you become desensitized to and it doesn't affect you that much. So, but like some people's idea of horror now is just the blood and guts and gore and nudity stuff. Like if you don't have all those things, if you don't have...
So basically kind of like, Playboy... guy who runs it.
Hugh Hefner, but he's dead.
Like, I don't know.
You didn't go to his funeral?
I was not invited. My tits aren't thick enough. So, no, like it's, I guess, kind of like he got desensitized to anything sexual over the years. So he had to have like crazy shit happening to actually get off, supposedly. Who knows? But so point being, when it comes to horror, I guess for some people.
Well, that was, I was just saying that some audiences, what
I am saying though is that back when Psycho came out, people laugh at Psycho now saying this isn't scary, but when it came out, people were literally fainting and upset over a toilet being shown on film. So point being, yes, we have become desensitized over the decades because people keep amping it up. And I love this, so what do you have to say? Because I'm going to talk about the movie too. Okay.
Well, but my point was there's different things that people find scarier that make a horror film to them. Because there are a lot of people that complained, The Haunting of Hill House wasn't horror. It had more drama than scares. And it's like, well, that was the point. If you care about people, then you actually care if something happens to them and they're in danger.
Also, it was scary.
But
it was legit creepy.
With Dr. Sleep, I don't think it really went for scares. It was more of, dealing with the idea of like what happens to you when you die or what happens after death. And that, to like me as a person, is infinitely more scary to think about than somebody running around with a knife and stabbing people or some demonic ghost walking down the hallway and jerky motion stuff.
Well, it's a whole thing where, because we were talking about this earlier, where it was funny because I didn't even know that the same director did Dr. Sleep, who also did Haunting of Hill House. Mm-hmm. And it felt very similar though. Like when this is not a spoiler, but when they walk back into the Overlook, or is that Overlook or Outlook?
Mm-hmm. Overlook.
The Overlook. We have a bar here in Louisville, I think, called Outlook Inn. So they go back into the Overlook and all the lights turn on, and that reminded me of Haunting of Hill House. But something too, one of the big reasons why I love Haunting of Hill House is also is that it's great to build up characters you care about, but they do a beautiful job of having sadness amongst the scariness. Mm-hmm. And so are we allowed to talk about the film at this point? There's a couple
just wait. I think we need a couple more. Let's get through a couple more things and give our general impressions, and then we'll go into spoiler territory.
So all I will say is this: there's a a couple of scenes I wasn't expecting in Doctor Sleep, and just in terms of how they made me feel.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the movie as a whole I thought was very good and well done, but those specific scenes, which we'll get to momentarily, where they sold me on this film, where I was like, in love. I love this movie officially, just because to William's point, I think that the monsters we create are never as truly scary as real life issues, such as dying alone. That's a very real fear that a lot of people grapple with and don't talk about. And I don't know if they don't put that in movies. That's a random example.
It's hard to make it
right. But it's
interesting,
right.
You know what I mean?
Or what's after death, and mental illness and addiction and all these things.
Yeah, there has been a lot to deal with mental illness, but it's never, rarely handled well.
It's usually exploitive.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like Babadook was a great metaphor, but also that's not
Well, because, how many movies have somebody with a split personality killing people and...
Yes, and that's also just, honestly, just a disservice to people who actually have those mental illnesses. But,
you talk about it making you feel different things or whatever. I think that's, the biggest strength to some films that are truly great is that oftentimes it's they paint with many different emotions. So you're getting many different things through the experience. It isn't just, hanging on one thing, you know? Even the original Shining, it's a lot of dread. That film lays it on as soon as the film starts, and it just starts building the dread. But there's also funny moments. You know what I mean? There's some mystery. There's just so much there, and there is some sadness there, and sometimes when Jack Torrance finally takes a drink, which I won't get into this, but Danny is an alcoholic in this film, and there's just so many great things they tie back and forth. But this film it goes in a different direction, because The Shining, like I said, it starts with dread and it just builds on it, and it just builds on it. This film is not that. This film is, at first it almost felt scatterbrained, and I mean the first part of it. I was enjoying it quite a bit, but it jumps around so much. I was like, Jesus, we keep jumping states. You know what I mean? I feel like it takes a little while to get a handle on it. But once the story almost slows down, once it sets all those pieces, then that's when I was like, oh yeah, I'm on board for this. But it does take a little bit. I don't think this is a perfect film, but a film doesn't have to be perfect to be one of my favorite films of the year. You know what I mean? Or my
Jurassic
favorite film.
Park, case in point.
It's perfect doesn't, it doesn't have to be perfect to be better or more important or more profound or anything.
It has to affect you and make you feel and think. And
this does that, but it also it gives you so many of those genre moments that are so fun and feel so Stephen King as well. That's another thing I love about it. It feels like it's so tightly connected to The Shining, but also parts of it feel like it could have been some other world Stephen King built. It's like he built another world and blended those two, or at least kind of the premise of it. It was totally unexpected for me. So it gave me a totally unexpected experience, while also giving me the familiar stuff and the nostalgia. And it wasn't even nostalgia, it's just the dread from that previous film. They're able to use it in this, with shorthand almost. You know what I mean? They start, you just start getting into a scene at certain moments, and all of a sudden you're transported back, and it uses the strengths of the previous film, and it just is able to take that and build on it. I don't think for me, this isn't a better film than The Shining. Well, it may be a better film in some regards. Again, it's all subjective. This definitely, I don't know. This has just as much to talk about, if not, I don't want to say if more, because Shining has a lot to talk about, but different things to talk about. You know what I mean? Both of them just have their strengths. And I just so glad we got this film, and I'm so glad it turned out so well. And I can't wait to watch it over and over again, because I will watch this film a lot.
And two, something that kind of is odd. So initially, I think the release date they had planned was for January of 2020, which seemingly would have been a much better period of time to release it, because you separate it out further from Halloween. January is usually a month that horror comes out and does pretty well. And if you kind of have not as much, I guess they chose November because October they thought it'd be too close to It Chapter 2, another Stephen King movie. And I guess they thought that, people are watching the...
And that's Warner Brothers as well, right?
Yeah, that was Warner Brothers.
Didn't want to cannibalize them.
And they didn't want to cannibalize their, the tail end of the other stuff. They didn't want to have... I don't know if they feared Zombieland double tap, but, you have enough other stuff on streaming services or whatever. But... like the choice to move it up, like, 'cause it seems like they do that in November every year and something doesn't do very well.
Yeah.
Because there was a movie last year that was like that too. And I'm forgetting what it is off the top of my head.
Watching this film, again, I don't know if it's like what you call like an Oscar
bait or
Oscar caliber maybe as far as just tonally or anything, but part of me did wonder, like, did they put this out in November because they wanted to be closer to Oscar season, so it's fresher in people's mind? Did they have that much faith in it and think like, hey, whatever this may do, maybe we can maybe we can get some Oscar nods or something for it. Like,
well, I think unfortunately that if something's a Stephen King adaptation, automatically for a lot of people makes them categorize it in their head in a way that's not going to let them think about it that way. And I think that a lot of the Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, maybe, but there are some exceptions. If you think about what The Shining is. But did those? I don't think those garnered much.
No, but I'm saying the modern mindset of those films are like Shawshank Redemption. Some people regard that as like one of the best American films. In the past 25 years.
No, it's The Dark Knight.
Batman v Superman, buddy.
Well, no, I'm just saying there was for a while on IMDb for years that raged on between the Shawshank Redemption and Batman or Dark Knight between the Nolan Batman bros versus the Shawshank fans.
How is that even comparable? I've not seen Shawshank, so I mean, am I missing something?
No, it's just what's ranked number one on IMDb is the best movie because it's based on like the user rating. So they would just go spam the movies they love with fake accounts to make them go higher.
Redemption is extremely good, Julie.
People so ridiculous.
And I think you would love that movie.
I think I would too.
I have a Blu-ray copy. I don't know if it's on streaming, but I've got a copy of it if you want. It's very good.
If you have TNT, you probably have I had seen it. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I mean, I've seen it from beginning to end and watched it multiple times, but I had seen parts of it on TNT about 1,000 times because they ran it. Because like when you own the property, you can run it as much as you want, and it just really built an audience
until
on
Disney
cable.
owns it.
Well, Warner Brothers at this point, but so the actors in it. So I don't know if we talked about the actors in it. So Ewan McGregor, you have like I said, Rebecca Ferguson,
and real quick too, the original Danny Torrance. He's a teacher, in E-Town?
Yeah,
he teaches the original Danny Torrance.
And then you have
he came to a Fright Night probably when Fright Nights were kind of big, like around 2011. He came to one of them. And I just said, hey, I didn't really talk to him. But they said he never does cons, and he just happened to come because he was like right down the road.
Apparently he had a very small cameo in Dr. Sleep as like some small background character. Yeah. So then the stars were also Kylie Curran, who is Abra, who's like the younger lead. Cliff Curtis was in it, who's been in a bunch of stuff. And then there were other genre favorites who were in it. I guess it's Carol Strucken. So he was from Twin Peaks as the fireman.
And he's also in Addams Family and Men in Black. Tons of stuff.
And then there's Jocelyn Donahue and Alex Esso and Bruce Greenwood. So a lot of people show up in this.
Did you guys see The Room? As an Oscar-nominated film with Brie Larson?
No, I've not seen that.
The young kid in that, he is a role in this film.
Oh, Jacob Tremblay?
I think so, yeah. But apparently he was in a Mike Flanagan film he did previously, so he had a history with him. That's why he showed up. He may have been I don't know if he was nominated, but he got a lot of heat on him because of that film, and he did such a good job in it. But people were like, why did he show up just to be this small role? Because he is kind of has a lot of cachet, but I think it's because Mike Flanagan worked with him a long time ago and they've got a relationship.
Yeah, and I think too they said why did you offer the actor that played Danny Torrance a cameo but not Jack Nicholson or Shelley Duvall? And with Jack Nicholson, he's like, well, he's retired first off, and I don't think he's done any acting in a while because
he's old.
He just goes to Lakers games and yells at the refs.
I'm sure he just is done.
But I saw that Roger Corman. He did The Departed, and then the Roger Corman documentary, he's in that, and he's so good in that. He gets emotional, talk about Roger Corman and stuff. He opens up. It's so good.
But he's so damn iconic. Anything you put him in, people are going to be like, oh, and that's going to kind of break the illusion completely.
Yeah, that would have taken away from what they were doing.
But I think he said that Jack Nicholson was supportive of the idea. But I mean, like, sure, it doesn't hurt him, and he probably gets residuals. Just make the residuals
they made
go up.
5 Batman movies since I played the Joker.
Yeah. But I mean, but so all the performances are very good.
And Shelley Duvall, unfortunately, she has like a.
I know she had fallen on a hard time.
She has like a mental disorder she's dealing with, and she's been exploited or something from what I've heard. So
was it Dr. Phil? I think that was
maybe.
Dr. Phil was involved.
Dr. Phil like interviewed her, but in an extremely exploitative way.
Yeah.
And I saw part of it, and I'm just like, God damn it, Dr. Phil, like, fuck you. Yeah. Like, you're not Oprah Winfrey. You don't give a shit. You're just trying to make money and get views. And
well, I need you to come on my show, and I can make a 2-part special. That's exactly how he talks. But the point, the acting was all good. So everybody's doing very good work. And then there's some people that are just very dependable at making likable or interesting characters, like Cliff Curtis. He just shows up in stuff all the time, and you like him.
Ewan McGregor.
And Ewan McGregor, they did.
I mean, Rebecca Ferguson. Did you watch the Mission Impossible movies?
So I saw the
most recent one.
Yeah, you saw Fallout.
Yeah, I mean, she's like, and 2, you know what?
She's
like
good.
in this, I'm like, man, not only is she a great actress, like she is extremely attractive in this movie.
Yeah.
And I don't normally bring that up in reviews, but like just anytime she was on screen, I'm like, she is just so gorgeous.
She was enchanting.
Yes, and it was just like
enchanting
every time she was on screen, she had me, and that's like an element to why I love this film so much as well.
And it's one of those things
she just has that it factor.
And it wasn't.
But it wasn't sexualized.
No.
She was in. I don't know. What did it remind me of? It reminded me of like. I don't know, because she had like her hair and like the
like
weird...
almost like a hippie.
Yeah, very.
I was gonna say she was the entire movie. She was
in like leggings and oversized shirts.
Yeah. It was nothing.
The entire movie.
She was even hanging out, but it was just like, man, I'm in love with her.
She was just really enchanting.
Yes, yeah.
She was like in this movie. She kind of looked like somebody you'd see at Whole Foods asking the manager if they have the organic wine sale or something.
Yeah, and she and I would talk for a long time about it.
and so basically, she's the villain of this film, a villain. But
if she was not fucking evil,
to have a somewhat likable villain. You know what I mean? It's a weird thing, like casting the likable actor in the role, and you're like, oh, it draws you in so much.
It's so important though to give either charisma or some kind of empathy to the villain. Otherwise, it's just a fucking.
Well, you have to give some layers to it because if it's just good versus
is like
evil,
easy shorthand to do it when you have the ability to choose.
And then so
I'm so glad to see her. I want to see her in so many more things. You know.
Yeah. So like. But
I didn't want to interrupt you.
Like I guess we can kind of like you said, so the movie looked very good. I mean, it kind of had a similar visual palette to The Haunting of Hill House. If you watch that, where just there's a lot of like bluish green tones and kind of subdued, desaturated imagery. It wasn't. Luckily, they made the wise decision to not try to ape the exact style of Kubrick.
No, because it is a different film. It's a different pace. It's a different type of story. It doesn't feel visually. The Shining is just like pretty much all of Kubrick films. Whatever you think of them, if you're cold on the emotional side, like they all look like some of the most epic things you could see. You know what I mean? Just visually, it's just like, oh, I'm watching the pinnacle of cinematic achievement almost. You know what I mean? And just the way he uses music. This is not that film. You know what I mean? It's more traditionally shot than like The Shining. You can't compare to that. They didn't try to. And again, I think he's just a great storyteller because he wasn't caught up in trying to pull some sort of weird tricks or worried about dazzling and doing something specific. It was all directed so well, and it was like, again, focused on the story. It didn't. He cares about the story, and I think that's why he's such a successful filmmaker. And he's like solid on the visuals and the staging and the scares and the build up. Like he knows what he is doing.
Yeah, the cinematography was very beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it was a good job at just subtly, I don't know, the colors in the room. Like they were, I just thought it was good in how he would, I don't know.
And it blended well.
He did a good job of every
with
scene.
pulling in the scenes from The Shining. Like it felt like its own thing, but also when we kind of like would go into Shining mode, it felt natural. You know what I mean? It didn't feel out of place. It was its own thing, but it's just there were so many good decisions made with this film that it just felt like it could have gone wrong at any point. Now, I will say this, though. For me, I heard somebody say they were so glad they didn't do it with like facial replacement or anything like that.
The CGI stuff.
Yeah, and I think like the person who played Wendy did a fabulous job. I won't go into anything else about anybody else that maybe they recreated. Okay, I don't know if he was in the trailer, but everybody did a really good job, but you can't compare to some of those actors. You know what I mean? Like that was another thing too, where it's like it felt weird to me, but I just accepted it. You know, and that's how they would have done it 30 years ago.
Right.
I liked it, but like I said, again, I've seen The Shining so many times that it's just like, you know what I mean? It's almost, it was almost jarring to see everything recreated like so to a T, but then it's like, oh wait, this thing is so not it. You know what I mean? Like this person is not this actor.
Yeah, because I think
there was a weird disconnect there. I'm not saying I'm like harping on the film for that. And I don't know where I would fall. I don't think I want them. Obviously, Shelley Duvall probably was not in the right state of mind to give her likeness. And I think the actress, I think she blended well into that role because she also sounded like her at times.
Yeah.
I mean, she did such a good job.
She did. She was great.
And maybe because she was so good, everybody else, it should have went exactly how it went. But there was just, that was something that was almost distracting to me on first viewing. But I think once I watch this like 2 or 3 more times, I will blend right into it, and you know what I mean? And it won't be a detriment at all. And not that it was a detriment. It was just, it stood out
there's
to
things
me.
that can take you out of...
But it would stick out way more to have a bad face replacement. And that would hurt the film 20 years down the road.
So does it only stand out because more movies recently have done the whole
It's only because I've seen it done
thing?
good in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 with a young Kurt Russell.
Well,
that's the only one I've seen that's been
Samuel
really good.
L. Jackson in
that looked really
Captain
good.
Marvel.
So because it has happened, it worked a couple times. I'm like,
also in Rogue One.
But I think in Rogue One it looked terrible.
No. I'm talking about Princess Leia.
I think it all looked terrible.
No, I don't.
Well, I disagree.
I thought that.
I disagree.
That ruined it for me.
Here's the thing. Emotionally, it's fine, but I think the actual visuals of it, watching it at home, like on Netflix, it just looked like garbage. I mean, and the Grand Moff Tarkin looked fake.
Maybe I just love that moment in Rogue One because everyone hates in Rogue One, but I love Rogue One.
I mean, people like that more
than
Last Jedi.
This was the safe choice.
Well, that's not saying much.
This was the safe choice, and it again, it was better to go with
probably easier and safe. And
what is it's going to look better on the film in 20 years, where even if some of that stuff looks good now, maybe we'll see it in higher resolution, in 10 years and be like, oh, this looks bad. Now this film is damaged. Like, I think this was the safe, and I think it was the right choice in the end. But again, like I said, the only negatives I had on it through first watch was that pulled me out some, and I kept trying to get back into it. And I did. Once the scenes got rolling and I got acclimated to who was playing them, then I was like, okay, I'm fine. But that took some adjustment to period. So once on rewatches, those will be fine. Yeah. And the first part, it was jumping around so much. I was like, oh my God, I'm just playing like Carmen Sandiego. Like I'm hopping around all these different states and I'm getting confused on where I'm at or anything.
Well, I think it's
then it slows down.
Yeah. It's part of the thing that a lot of Stephen King novels, they have trouble when they adapt them to movies, is a lot of his more grounded stories also have more fantastical elements to them. Yes. And a lot of the movies that have been successful stick to kind of the straightforward elements of it because the adaptations, they didn't do the space turtle stuff.
Yeah.
Now you could argue how effective in it there was a space turtle that told them how to defeat Pennywise.
Yeah.
So there's stuff there's stuff that works on the page that does not work on screen and would alienate people because
was it called a space turtle?
I mean, it specifies that's what it was.
That's what everybody calls it. I don't know if it had a name, but I think that's what
Stephen King write out the space turtle told them?
Probably said
it had a name, but the point was a lot of his novels have these more out there things, and I think this movie did what they mostly do is tone some of it down, but then at the beginning to kind of set the stage for what's going on. In a novel, you can have it be 600 pages. Nobody cares if you're crisscrossing narratives like the Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones books. They do that. But for this, they had to do a lot of table settings. Like, well, here's Danny Torrance now. Mm-hmm. Here's where he's at. Here's this character.
Here's
over
some backstory for you if you haven't seen The Shining.
Yeah. So here's a little bit of catching you up. Here's your new character. Giving you some of that background, and then here's your other new character.
Great. But it's just every time I started getting into the film, they would change. You know what I mean? The scene would end, and they would like have a font of like whatever state they're in, and I'm like, I don't remember the last state I was in. It doesn't matter to me.
Like,
just jump around and then get me into it. I quit making me read stuff because it's pulling me out of the story.
Because it reminded me to some extent of when you have the Fast and the Furious movies or whatever. And the beginning of it, you have to catch up on where all the characters are and bring the gang back together. So this movie had to do all the table setting, which is kind of in stark contrast to The Shining, which was one family going to one place and then staying there.
It was so streamlined, you know.
So I think that, like, there's a small elements, but that just help lay out, like, this is a different type of movie. This isn't confined to one location and delving into these themes and doing things that are intentionally trying to cause... Because, like, The Shining would break the 180 rule, which is basically just in a scene, if somebody's on the left and the right, all of the shots that occur of them should keep them in the relative left and right, so your brain can make sense of where they're at. In The Shining, Kubrick reversed that and would switch, because the scene where Jack's in the bathroom, it jumps back and forth, and it flips them from left to right to left, and then it's disorienting, which is intentional to make you be uneasy.
Yeah.
But this movie doesn't do stuff like that because it's a different type of movie.
Yeah.
So I think there's just... It was wise.
It's a different goal.
It was a wise decision to not try to replicate all those techniques, and not to try
telling a different story. You know, that was about you know, Jack Torrance, him fragmenting and, you know, breaking down and stuff in this hotel and like feeding off him and stuff. That's not what this film is. You know what I mean? So it's
this movie. I know, like, Derek's not here, but there's even some echoes of like X-Men in it. There's some echoes of like Near Dark. There's a lot, you know, Lost Boys. There's other things that you can kind of like find parallels in pop culture. And two, I think there was like Stephen King did a poll in 2011 or something asking what he should write next, the sequel to The Shining or something else, and then that one, so he wrote Dr. Sleep. So it wasn't like this was a long, ruminating passion project that he was sitting on and had always thought about the thematic elements. As more of he kind of heard a story about, I guess this isn't too much of a spoiler, heard a story about a nursing home that had a cat, or somewhere that had a cat that would go in patients' rooms when they were going to die.
So as soon as that happened, again, you know, that's an element to the film. I had heard that story too. I feel like that was have you all heard that as well?
Yeah.
That was well circulated. Yeah, I felt like
that was what inspired him to write a story. But it sounds like he often just takes like this kind of disparate element from the real world or his personal experience, and then fashions a movie around or fashions a book around.
I also just listened to Stephen King's On Writing and his whole process of it. It was very fascinating. But I mean, he sits down and he writes, and he's like, I do basically 2 drafts of the book, and then he does one, lets his wife read it, and then I think does another and sends it out to like close friends maybe, and then I don't know if he sends it to the editor or what, but basically he does like a few drafts, and then of course he says he reads it about 17 more times and going over it. But it sounds like when he writes a book, he doesn't fawn over like, oh, like, you know, what does this paragraph mean? He's like, it's not, I mean, he does crank them out as far as like how much he publishes, but it sounds like you said, he starts on a book, he finishes it. He doesn't have like 15 balls in the air at all times. It doesn't seem like it. He starts on a project, he finishes it, and he moves on.
Well, it's kind of like, it sounds like his creative process for coming up with new books. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that's very personal to him that he writes because of personal experiences, but it's kind of how we come across like short films. It's like, this thing is kind of cool, this core concept, let's make something out of this, and then you just go do it. Except he's, you know, a master writer.
Yeah, and naturally put yourself into it. But I went to when he came into town to Iroquois amphitheater. He was here and he did a talk and everything, but he said something to the audience like as soon as he started, like, hey, do you know, like, you know, there's how many people here? He's like, you know, like 1 in, you know, 100 chance that somebody's going to get their car broken into or whatever. Or he says something like that, or you're going to get attacked on the way. And then eventually he goes, you know, actually I made that fact up, but I was trying to prove a point that whenever I write something, I plant a seed in somebody's head of fear, and they let that build on their own, you know, with their own experiences into it. He's like, and that's how I do it. Even if the fact isn't real, I sell maybe a concept or something to them. Yeah, that allows it to kind of build. But then, of course, once he starts writing, he's filling 600 pages. So he puts a lot of his self in there or personal experiences.
Like I said, a lot of stuff, too, you can
Which is why he got so mad about The Shining, too.
Because it was a personal story about alcoholism, things like that, that Kubrick kind of subverted and changed around and handled differently than he would have wanted, which is understandable because you can say this is a work of art, but it's not the work of art that I wanted to come from the source material. Because there are plenty of people that hate well-regarded films because they don't like the way it compares to a book or something. But so in terms of giving this movie a score before we move into the spoilers, so Julie, what would you give this out of 10? You're on the spot.
Probably a 7. 7.5.
What about you, William?
Is that...
So
I'm going high on this.
Like I said, I've only...
7 or 8.
I'm going high on this.
I've only seen it one time.
Yeah, again, it's...
So based on if I hadn't watched Haunting of Hill House and all that stuff and you just said it's coming out, my anticipation level would have been pretty low. But then the end product and actually really enjoying Haunting of Hill House and everything, I came into it and I came out really enjoying it. It's like an 8, 8.5, something like that.
I didn't even know that was the same director, and
there's stuff in it that could have been handled a little bit differently, or probably could have been a little more engaging.
Yeah.
And with the spoilers, maybe the ending could have gone a different direction, but overall, very much enjoyed it. It touched on things that to me, are interesting and scary, thoughts. Like you said, you lay a seed. Some of the things in the movie that it approaches aren't traditionally scary, but if you go and think about it, wake you up in the middle of the night and not be able to go back to sleep. And it's not because you're thinking about this movie, it's because you're thinking about with this movie, the themes it hit on and how it goes to your life.
Do I have a death cat? Is that why they're on the end of the bed right now?
Well, hopefully none of our cats are telling.
Every single night.
Again, I pointed out the things that pulled me out of the film, or at least maybe some slight frustrations or roadblocks into this film but being so surprised at just what I got out of this, and the fact that again The Shining is one of my most watched horror film that's not a horror comedy. I was very skeptical when I saw that first trailer. I said, okay, I'll give it a chance. I like everybody involved in it, but it's such a weird thing to do. That's a ballsy move to make a sequel to The Shining. And again, I've got to watch it multiple times, I think, to really gauge, but I easily, I think, give it a 9 out of 10, because the things that made me feel, when it hit certain music cues and stuff, I wanted to stand up and throw my Coke at the screen. I was just this should not be doing this to me. I was having so many emotions watching that film that I've never had watching a film. The closest thing is probably Blade Runner 2049. But it wasn't an emotional, these moments in this film come in during emotional moments, or kind of a head to it, where you're in one world basically almost, and then you kind of go into hey, we're going to revisit The Shining here, and then they go into the Shining mode. So it's almost like a build up, or just they use it very effectively. Blade Runner, it's the whole film is a sequel to Blade Runner, and there's some great moments, but when the text comes up on the beginning of Blade Runner, when I first saw that, I was like, holy shit, I'm actually seeing a sequel to Blade Runner. That was the closest thing, but this had those moments that just hit me, and I'm never experiencing that before, and this film can't, if it ever gets remade, it's not gonna be the same thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. It can't do that, because it will be doing it again or whatever. So in that regard, I think it is so extremely special, because it was in such a unique position, unlike any other film, because that is one of my personal favorite horror films of all time. So I give it a 9 out of 10 probably, but if you twist my arm and say, okay, sure, 10 out of 10, no, it's not perfect, but I don't rate a film based on if they're perfect or whatever. It's just what I got out of it, or how much I enjoyed it. Actually, my enjoyment level was a 10 out of 10 on this film, even though I was frustrated with some parts in the beginning. So I'll give it a 10 out of 10. Screw it.
And two, I think a sad thing with the box office performance, it could, have legs and leg it out to make it where, kind of breaks even, so it's not a huge deal. But, I think that studios will look at the decline in performance from It Chapter 1 to 2 in this movie and say, maybe we shouldn't be investing more than 10, 15 million in a horror movie. Well, and I think that kind of does a disservice, because I even know this, it very much falls under the horror banner because there's the different imagery and stuff that in it. But you could also not categorize this as a horror film.
Yeah, this is...
I've heard people say, hey, I don't go see anything but superhero films in theaters, because they feel like those need to be seen on screen, or they want to be part of the kind of like public experience of that. Not public, but just the cultural impact, because they want to be able to talk about it.
Cultural public experience. So when we were in the theater, we could hear. I heard people vocally responding to what we were seeing on screen.
Well, I meant them being able to talk to anybody about, hey, did you see Avengers? You know what I mean? That thing. They want to be a part of the crowd. Yeah. So they said they'll go see that. I wonder if too, like horror films specifically, they've got another challenger where, like, of course they set their dates a year out in advance. Like, hey, this film's coming out in 2020, the end of 2020 or whatever. Like with the streaming channels now, they have like this secret weapon where they can just drop a film if they want to, and you might not even know it's coming out. And suddenly somebody's staying home on a Friday night to watch that instead of watching your film. And they could position that and say, hey, we just want to let's just take out Warner Brothers a little bit. Let's dump this film that we know is going to compete with it, because that's their competition.
Netflix dropped In the Tall Grass, which I still haven't watched it, which is based on a Stephen King story directed by Vincenzo Natali.
And Joe Hill, right? Didn't he co-write that with him? I think it's Stephen King and Joe Hill.
Yeah, but it's like they can just drop that stuff in any given moment. So, hopefully people take the message of, more, I don't know. I think, like I said, a lot of people are still stuck in the mode of if it's a horror film, everybody should be shrieking and have really fun, and the core audience should be 17 years old. And
it's a different crowd if you're speaking to that crowd, if you're not, I was thinking, what's my favorite or the horror films that I admire the most and love the most from the past, 5 or 10 years I can think about. But it's Killing of the Sacred Deer. I know you didn't love Raw, but Raw, I still think about that film a lot. You know what I mean? And that means something. That was such a unique vision. I don't know if it's up there, but I really liked A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night.
Yeah.
Is that the whole title? There's those types of films I think impact me more than the ones that just do a variation of the zombie genre, or you know what I mean? It's just, those are so much more impactful to me. And I consider a lot of those films horror films, or The Lighthouse, which I just saw.
I still want to see that.
Yeah,
I guess that's debatable on that one. That one is more of a gray area, but there's some elements that could be a horror film too. But this film feels like it just stays in the lane of horror so well, but it surpassed all those other it's more genre-esque horror films.
It's expansive and but yeah, so I guess now if you haven't seen the movie, we're going to get into the story stuff and discuss some of the story elements. If you haven't seen it, we're going to discuss stuff that you wish you wouldn't have known. So go see the movie.
The surprise for me, it was a big part of my enjoyment. So my score could change. I could be I'm soured on this, or this isn't exciting, but I don't think it will be at all. But that was part of just my enjoyment, is the surprise. So I do not think you should listen to spoilers.
Before we get into spoilers, though, as someone who is an admitted big baby about watching scary movies, in fact, he can attest, when we were watching this one, I did watch it like this.
Yeah.
A big part of the time, because when I was a kid, that fucking lady in the goddamn bathtub lady, scary as shit.
Tub girl.
And so, it was not Tub Girl. I guess one is scarier than the other. So my point is, remembering that from the original Shining, I was fully anticipating all kinds of scary imagery, and so I did whenever I could feel they were amping up to a scary moment, I would be oh, hands up.
Yeah.
And so anyway, point being though, as a self-identifying horror film baby who can't watch stuff without covering her eyes, this is not scary. If you yourself or someone who is a baby about scary stuff, this is very much, I don't even want to call it a thriller, but this is again the more slow burn horror, that things happen where it's a situation, and the real life horror that really classifies it as a horror film still, but it is not scary, if that
but there's so many genre elements to it that also it never, even though it never feels like you're waiting for a revelation to see why is this, why were they playing this at moment. It's just things move also pretty fast because you're always jumping around, but it's not necessarily scary stuff. It's
well, because because with me, you say I'm just desensitized to everything, but
because nothing scares you.
Well, because here's the thing. To me, seeing a ghost that's moving around and with twitchy motion and that's not scary. Seeing a dismembered body, that's not scary. Now, because the funny thing is when we watch like a horror movie, you'll cover your eyes for the fake stuff. Then we watch like a show about botched plastic surgeries on Netflix, and I'm sitting here covering my eyes.
And I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Because they're fixing somebody's breast implant or liposuction, or just like shoving stuff in their body.
Yeah, and there's pus coming out.
And then I'm like,
real.
oh, so it's like this weird thing where you can watch real stuff but not fake stuff. But like to me, movies can disturb me and upset me and make me really get excited or, concerned for a character's well-being. And that's what gets me. So a movie like this to me is far and away preferred to a movie that's intent is to scare me.
If you watched Haunting of Hill House and you liked it, you will like this, even if you don't think you like the original Shining. And because I would give Haunting of Hill House a 10 out of 10. Like, even though I watched it like this most of the time, and I still haven't gone back to actually rewatch and see the ghosts and the scary moments. I want to, though, because that affected me. Like, it did, like, the creep factor was good, but then there's, you gotta watch it, Sean.
I know.
You gotta watch it.
It's hard for me to find, like, 10 hours or whatever.
No, I know. It's good. It's real good. And again,
I started watching it and then, like, got busy. And
yeah, no. Anyway, so I think if you enjoy that show, you will also enjoy this, especially if you also can enjoy The Shining, and you should.
Yeah, so now we'll move into discussing spoilers for Dr. Sleep. So, like I said, full spoilers now. So the Alex Esso was Wendy Torrance. I thought she did a good job. They did some stuff with like the wardrobe and makeup and just her performance
her teeth
was close enough that it didn't like bring me out of the experience.
Well, and to her voice, every now and then she would hit her voice would hit a like note that sounded exactly like hers. And it's like it was so.
Hi, I'm Shelley Duvall.
Yeah,
that one video.
But the Jack Nicholson, you can't. It's hard to replace him, especially with his performance in that film. But it's not used. He's not used a lot, and it's what's important is the point of the scene. You know what I mean? That is what's important. It's played so well, and again, it plays off the old film, and it.
Because even though I haven't seen the movie in years, we have an interruption.
Yes.
We have a cat interruption. Yes. Even though I haven't seen the movie in a long time, I saw that scene. I was like, oh, it's the bar. He's in the bar. And the lighting was the same, like the soft.
And at this point, the alcoholism for Jack Torrance, we know it's a thing. We are built up with him, breaking Danny's arm on accident, or was it an accident? You don't know. But this, I mean, we see kind of, we've seen Danny's journey almost, like him at his lowest point, his recovery. You've been with him like he's like, not the entire time, but he's like 7 years sober or something. So that you are like hoping that he will not fall to that.
Yeah.
And that's a difference between the way it handles it in the original film versus this. And it's such a big moment. That ties with it. Like, I just think all that is handled so well. Because it's almost like in a superhero film. Like, it's a Marvel or something where they do something to overcome something. Like, where it's some physical feat, but in this, it was him turning away a drink, and it was like real. So much.
That's real. How many people who have joined AA successfully gotten past their demons of like addiction to something, whether it's alcohol or drugs or smoking a cigarette, like that's an addiction. That's hard, and so worked past it, and then been given temptation by no other than their dead father. Yeah. They're his father's ghost.
Who succumbed to his demons.
Right. And then said no. And and I thought it was cool the build up to showing Jack Nicholson or Jack Torrance. Yeah. I feel like the build up to that was
actually
cool.
I thought, okay, they're smartly not going to show him because that would be weird. And they showed him and I was like, ugh.
But they did the side.
So to clarify, so when Danny Torrance is at the bar, and Jack Torrance, they shoot him from the side. So there's enough of a resemblance to Jack Nicholson, and he's not leaning into doing a caricature or a impersonation. That I was fine with.
Yeah.
because it was just shot from the side.
It just took me a moment to
and
get
it was,
used to it. And the scene was like,
because you're like, wait,
wonderful.
is that supposed to be?
But then,
yeah.
I mean, because like,
No, the thing is, I knew immediately, and I'm like, this is not even like in the same realm almost, because Jack Nicholson is another realm himself. You know, the guy did a fine performance.
So there's other things, like if you think about it, so would it have been more...
It's like somebody doing a replacement of Nicolas Cage in Face Off. Like, you can't be Nick Cage. You know what I mean? You can't be Jack
Well, the
Nicholson.
other thing is, like, would it have been more effective? Like you said, Nicholson's pretty much retired, but would he have done voiceover to be off screen and they not show his face?
That would have been cool.
But, I mean, he may have not been down for that. That may have not been the direction when they go. They may have wanted to clearly separate from the original film.
But, you know, it's like, I appreciate the fact that he didn't dance around like, oh, this, like, he presented it the way he wanted to present it. And that was replacing with the actors and, you know what I mean, not feeling he was restricted, like, oh, we can't do this because we don't have the original actor. Or he did what he wanted to do, and that was most important for the scene, for the story. And again, he didn't get caught up with, I don't know, he didn't let the unimportant things get in the way of telling the story. And that could have been very, huge.
If they did like a really bad face replacement thing, I don't know that would have looked very good because, you know, like we mentioned, like the Marvel movies did it well, but those also had budgets of $200 million, $100+ million.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, you know, how well. I mean, I don't know. I've seen like the deep fakes people have done that look about as good as the feature film or some feature films, but
again, it's the physicality of Jack Nicholson's face. You know what I mean? Like, even if they did a face replacement, he would have to play that role.
He had such an incredibly expressive face.
Yes.
And
uniquely
I think they just made the wise decision to say, look, this is, I mean, here's the thing. This is a sequel to The Shining, the movie, because the hotel exists and a lot of those elements match up to the movie. Like I said, at the end of The Shining book, the hotel's gone.
My God, I've read part of the book. They beat you over the head. He is the maintenance guy tells like Jack Torrance 1,000 times, this is how you maintain the boiler. If you do it wrong, this place is going to blow sky high. And it's like they beat you over the head with that. I'm like, okay, I knew that it burned down in the novel, but I'm like, if I didn't know, I would know now. Unless it's so much that it's like, is this misdirection? Like they do it for like 2 chapters, it seems like. Then they do some other stuff. Then the maintenance guy's leaving the Overlook Hotel. Like, and again, this is like probably page 120. Like they're not even in the Overlook alone yet. Yeah. Like over 100 pages in. And he's like, by the way, don't forget the boiler room. Like, it's just like over and over. Like, and that's what I think the movie, the original Shining, again, they changed some things, but Kubrick knew how to streamline that story.
Well, and stripped out the extraneous stuff and focused on what he thought was the important element of it. And
to fit it in the context of a 2-hour and whatever movie.
And then, you had in the original Dick Halloran dies, and in the book he lived. And then in between Dr. Sleep, the book, and Dr. Sleep, the movie, in the book, Danny Torrance lives. And in the movie, he doesn't. But thematically, they set, I think, setting him up, Dick Halloran basically tells him to be the new Dick Halloran for Abra.
Use the Force, Luke.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is...
That's what I felt like. I was like, oh, they're just like Force ghosts.
He's
and Obi-Wan. Ewan McGregor is...
He Obi-Wan...
I know.
He Obi-Wan Kenobi's.
That's what I was thinking at the end of this film.
He starts off scruffy, gets his act cleaned up, and then sacrifices himself for the new generation.
The Padawan has become the master.
And, so that you have those elements, but then, the
film is basically... So here's the thing that I was like, whoa, this film. It is basically soul vampires. And like it's a all it is a vampire film, which ties into the rules of The Shine and Shining, and it has blown up this universe where Dick Halloran said, "Oh yeah, I've met other people that had The Shine," so there's a couple other, maybe there's some other people, but you don't know. And now it's like, oh, this is almost like again like a superhero film or X-Men film where it's like, oh, people have The Shine. These people feed on the people that have the most shine and their pain and suffering. They're just like soul vampires, and they live a long time. Like. That is the genre elements that I'm like, whoa, shit. Like, you can't really get bored watching this film because you have vampires tracking them down, led by Rebecca Ferguson. It's just like I did not expect that out of this film.
Well, and two, that's where I said it was kind of like Near Dark, where you have, because once she realized Danny Torrance is pretty powerful, she's like, oh, I'll give you this one offer, you can join me. Yeah. And it's also because he was standing in her way and was a major obstacle, but...
I mean, that scene, too, of course, the stairs, the axe, like, all that, I was like, holy shit. Like, okay, Avengers Endgame, like the last like big scene in that, I hadn't really experienced some sort of build up and release like that before in a film in that specific way, because it was like, oh, all these heroes are coming back, like this is a cool thing or whatever. But like, I didn't expect it to feel like that type of thing, like almost times 10 watching a sequel to The Shining that pays, on the stairs with the axe, and like all of a sudden all the ghosts of the whole overlooked hotel are surrounding him. It's just.
Well, and two, like, I would have never expected that a part of The Shining would have Danny Torrance and someone else gunning down people in the woods. Because
I love that sequence too, as a suspense action sequence. Like, you're like, holy shit.
They set up the Amber is very powerful, and you know that they have a plan because he's telling her something, and he's like, how long can you keep doing it? So you know that something's going on, and I don't think that her dad would have agreed to let
her go with his daughter
go with two random men with guns out in the middle of nowhere. So like all that played out in a very entertaining fashion. But there was like
Luke Skywalker force projection thing.
I know.
Yeah, and then but the dread or like the fear factor was pretty high. Because you're like, oh man, what's going to happen here?
Yeah.
And then Abra's dad gets killed.
Yeah, like that's like, oh shit, man, they're going for it.
And then the crow guy kidnaps Abra and drugs her so she can't use the shine. And then Danny's able to kind of like Luke Skywalker from The Last Jedi, he had shut himself off to the shine so that it wouldn't interfere with his daily life and he wouldn't draw attention. But then he has to re-engage with it and use it more than he's ever used it before, and is able to do new things with it that he didn't know he could do. So it's one of those things where I didn't really expect the movie to go in those directions. And that's also, like I said, like the band, I think in the book they're called the True Knot, like the group that's the steam eaters of people that have the shine. Like they did a pretty good job of just laying out they've been around for a while, and they take people along that have different abilities that can help them. And they, over time have had less and less people that they can bring or they have less and less meal options in terms of people that have the shining and have enough of it that it will feed them. And then, it's kind of, like to do the other side of addiction, Danny Torrance kicked his addiction and got clean. They're all addicted to steam, which is a stand-in for a drug. And she's like, you'll eat well and live long or whatever.
And a lot of times Stephen King, his things are somewhat on the nose, for some of those things. But that's fine, that stuff doesn't bother me in his stories typically, because I know what to expect out of them.
But so you have the element of like that fails, and then I don't know, they succeed and they kill everybody who's there.
Yeah.
But the crow somehow wasn't there, and Rosie the Hat's not there
because he had one last trick.
So
that's what you said, whatever.
So like the one thing I would say that they didn't really necessarily do a great job at was clarifying what the abilities of the other members of their group were that made them someone that she wanted to take on. They showed the young girl who's 15, like she had the ability to push people to do things against their will.
Again, I don't think it mattered story-wise because they didn't use them. She used it, once in hers. I don't, they were all taken out. I think it just would have detracted from.
Yeah.
I think
I knew that they had special abilities.
Well,
but
it wasn't an X-Men film. So.
No, who cares?
I actually was thinking about, like, why did they take time to have the 15-year-old girl who could, like, make you do whatever she said? Why did they take time to introduce her? And I'm like, well, it's because that's the easiest way to give the exposition of who they are and what they do. And I feel like...
They were telling somebody what they did. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. And showing. That's the thing, too. Not even telling, but showing when they turned her into one of them. And, well, the thing, too, though, is I felt like the interesting thing with... I forget the girl's name, the 15-year-old girl's character, but the interesting thing with her was that ultimately she's a terrible person because of what they did to, like, the little boy and everyone else. But the interesting thing they did was that she was luring men to steal their money who are pedophiles.
Yeah. Snakebite Andy.
Andy?
Andy.
Okay. So, yeah.
There's a snake in my boot.
So that was the cool thing about that is like, so when
you were almost on her side at first because you're like, oh, maybe they're not going to turn her because she's like, she's doing this for a good reason.
She's going after pedophiles.
Yeah.
Or
right. And so it's like obviously hurting children is not cool, but like if they're a pedophile, you know, like you have far less empathy for them.
It seems kind of like, so if she was going out of her way in the beginning to stop men that were hurting, you know, children.
But also to help herself by stealing money.
But then she would then later kill a child and devour them.
Right.
Like, it's one of those things where I guess she got addicted to it enough.
Yeah, or, you know, again, they turned her basically. You know, like a vampire, they turned her. Right. You know, they said, you're not alive anymore.
And two, there are people who are very law-abiding citizens who've never gotten in trouble, get addicted to heroin, and commit heinous crimes in the service of trying to get enough money to get their next fix. So, I mean, that does ring true in that regard. Going back to the Outlook Hotel, like you knew it was going back there.
Oh, honestly, I didn't for sure. Because I didn't know if this was going to be like something in his mind. You know,
they showed it in the trailer, I think. So that's
they show the hotel, but I didn't know they were actually. I didn't know if it was like, oh, this is like they are both together, like going there in his mind or something. I did not know how it would be handled.
Well, there's kind of the you know, like the Chekhov's gun, the Chekhov's box at the beginning when you see how he learns how to capture all of the spirits. Like, there's no way that doesn't come back into play in a big way. Of him, you know, you see in his mind, he has all the boxes of all the ones he's captured, and you're like, oh, he's going to let all of them out.
Mm-hmm.
And then he did. And it was cool.
Yeah. And then they killed...
and they ate her.
It was great.
They killed...
Rose the Hat.
But then for him, they just kind of possessed him. But then, like you say, going back to the boiler room stuff, which is probably pulling from the Shining book instead of the movie, when he first got to the hotel, he went and screwed up with all the boiler stuff so that the place would burn down and be destroyed. So then, you know, he has a vision.
How did he know that information, though? I don't know.
Yeah.
Because that's because they combined the book and the movie.
But how did he know it from the book? I haven't got to that part, but
I don't know.
He's only told Danny Torrance or Jack, I think. You know what I mean? Like Jack's the only one on the tour. Well, like he went on the tour before Danny.
Maybe Danny has, you know, over the years become adept at hotel management.
Again, it doesn't really matter for the story. It's fine. It's just something I thought of.
Like part of his plan may have been like looking up how to.
Dick Halloran told him.
Yeah, or it's just on the way there. Part of his plan was I need to do some research about how to destroy this hotel, so when we leave, it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only reason why I don't give it like a 10 is because there were a few plot holes that just bothered me. Also, I'm sorry, the heartbeat throughout the entire film bothered me.
See, I barely even...
I was super obvious.
Well, as they do like the bass drops, like like throughout the movie.
Yeah, like that's fine.
But you hate bass. You hate bass.
That's not true.
You do.
I'm an old lady and don't like loud sounds. But like... I have actually earplugs in my purse when I go to concerts.
See, I'm half deaf, so I probably didn't even pick up on those.
But they did have like the heartbeat sound like throughout so much of it. And I'm like, that's not necessary right now. He's just pulling up to a grocery, like, or whatever. Yeah. Like it was.
Well, it's trying to set the stage of like stuff can happen anytime. And
well, but to me, and again, everyone's different though. To me, it was a little distracting. But again, that's
your experience, though. You know,
it's an extremely nitpicky thing because I did. So, can we take a minute and talk about the Death Kitty? Because little Lizzie, the Death Floofy Kitty, because that was beautiful and wonderful, and that's what 100% made me love the film.
I almost feel like when I saw those scenes in the movie and it kind of moved past it, I'm like, I feel like this was probably a big part of the book. Maybe not, but it felt like there was so much there. But I guess what else are you going to do as far as drama-wise?
He was called Dr. Sleep because
of that. And it's like, okay, this is like a 20-minute section of the film and that's it, you know?
Because I didn't get why it was called Dr. Sleep until that moment. And I was like, oh my God, he's called Dr. Sleep because he's helping people die, not alone. Like, I was just like, oh my God, that's wonderful. And the Death Kitty. Yeah, what's funny is I had heard that story years ago about the cat in the nursing home. So as soon as they showed the cat in the nursing home, I was like, oh, someone's going to die.
When it walked in the room, I thought, oh, yeah, that's what this
as soon as the cat was on the desk and they introduced the cat, I knew that was what they were going to do, having no prior knowledge of the actual story. But and they goes in the room and then the guy's like, the cat's in my bed. Like, oh, well, I can get her off. No, it's because she knows. And then they had and so something too that I really loved. So when the first old guy in the bed the first go around with Lizzie the Death Cat, when he was talking about, I think, religion or beliefs or something, and then Dan has the wonderful line where he says, and I forget the actual like verbatim, but he has the line about, well, it's not what you believe, it's your actions.
Mm-hmm. He's like, it's not your beliefs, but your actions make you a good person.
And I'm just like, oh, if only more religious people actually lived by that, my God. But like, and I'm saying that as someone who grew up going to a Christian school and like hearing for years that it's not your actions that get you into heaven, but your belief. And so like, anyway, and people can get mad or whatever, but like that was just a beautiful line, a beautiful moment where, you know, this guy is saying like, don't go, stay here with me. And he just helped him fall asleep, and, you know, the deep sleep that you don't wake up from. And that was just beautiful. And then the other dead guy where like, he like wakes up and then looks down, it's just a cat. Like laying in between his legs, as cats do, as any cat owner knows that cats do. And anyway.
Like, what if, like, at the end of the movie, he's like, surprise, suckers. The only ones who get to live after death got the shine. If you ain't got it, you're dead. Because he sees Dick Halloran, and then he exists after he dies at the end of the film. But, like, and he tells people, he's like, you know, there's something after death. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, that's just up to me, like, somebody sitting there, like, asking, like, you know, on their way to dying. To me, that's more upsetting, the type of thing that can make you stay up in the middle of the night.
I mean, I'm sure that does keep people up at night, though, is thinking about what does happen. And I think that so we're in our 30s and in good health, as far as we know, you know, so like for people who, you know, are relatively young, relatively healthy, you know, especially if you haven't recently lost a very close loved one, you may not think about these existential questions and life after death and all of that. But when you do, it's hard. It's so hard and it's scary. And I really like how this movie does lightly touch on those themes. Mm-hmm. And that's, to me, like the real horror that I was alluding to earlier. And
I wonder if part of that is Stephen King getting older. You know what I mean? I know he wrote this 2011 or whatever, but, you know, I wonder if that is something. I mean, obviously his books have always been surrounded death.
Or he lost a loved one or something, you know, or something happened.
And he almost, maybe not died, but he got in that bad car wreck too in like 99 or 2000. But, you know, I wonder if that is like weighing on him more, you know, where it's not just about people dying. It is like, okay, what is it actually going to be like? Right. You know, my final moments and like, how am I going to find peace or whatever?
And is it just nothing?
Yeah.
And what's scarier? You know, like, and anyway, I really, but they didn't spend too much, because too much time on that makes it a little bit too heavy. Mm-hmm.
So it's the type of thing that if you really draw it out too much, and if you think too much,
then you're just like,
if everybody thinks about, because I think I've read something where your brain physiology is kind of geared not to think about that, because otherwise just things grind to a halt and nobody like they're consumed with this fear.
Point? Yeah.
But you know but the movie does touch on things that to me are more of the existential dread in real life. That give it more resonance than if it's just a scary thing happening.
Yeah, and that tied into, that's the thing too, is I think, again, I love Haunting of Hill House, but it's so funny because the whole time watching Dr. Sleep, I was like, I really enjoy this, and the reasons why I enjoy this is the same reason why I enjoyed Haunting of Hill House.
I heard somebody say it's like a thematically related to that in some regard.
It's just so good. But then afterwards, he was like, did it remind you of it? And I'm like, oh yeah, especially when they went back to the hotel. And then he was like the same director, and I'm like, oh, well that explains that. And so but that was a big thing about Haunting of Hill House. Does a wonderful job of combining and joining, you know, make-believe horror with real life horror. And melding, that melds it together even more beautifully, I think. But they did a good job in I really enjoyed Dr. Sleep. And the more, I'm going to watch it again.
Another thing, too, that's the difference between the movie and the book for Dr. Sleep is in the book it indicates that Jack Torrance, like, found peace at some point and, like, acknowledged Danny in a way that he saw that he was, like, at peace. To me, like, one of the saddest arcs in this movie was Jack Torrance still being consumed by the hotel and not having some semblance of his prior humanity, or if he did, he's just completely forgone them. Mm-hmm. And even has the little speech about how the reason you become an alcoholic is because your kid and your wife drag the life from you and stuff. So that was like a really like down, sad beat. That he saw his father again. You know, he even said that the reason he drank and was all that was because that was what he knew of his dad. But then his dad,
that was a really good moment.
His dad hasn't progressed and moved on. He's regressed and gotten worse. So that's like a sad moment. Like maybe once the hotel is destroyed, then the pull of the location isn't as strong. But I mean, I think part of it's just that location itself had the power and had the thing that caused all that to happen. And because it kind of recontextualizes The Shining in that a lot of this stuff happened to the extent that it did because Danny was there and had that ability.
It fed. I think it also maybe fed on Jack's, his own personal demons.
Well,
I think it also fed on him and how much trauma he had because they had this, I guess even like the Shine demons, like they feed on that as well. And Jack was dealing with a whole lot at the time. And
two, like, I forgot what I was going to say, but. But I think that the idea was because like obviously the prior groundskeeper killed his family too, like the two little girls.
Brady.
So obviously the place could drive anybody crazy, but I think that it was amplified in what exactly was going on with Danny having the ability and it eating and feeding off that. At least that's what some of the stuff I've read has said. So it kind of recontextualizes a classic, but doesn't do anything to harm it.
Yeah, which is like, I mean, it's just incredible what they pulled off.
Because you see, Rose,
what the stakes were, what they were like trying to build on.
Because you see how dangerous Rose is, and then she gets taken out by the hotel, so obviously it's powerful.
Yeah, yeah. That scene too with Arnie was like, oh man, that's the supermarket scene was pretty cool too. When she's like trying to like. Get it. She sees a reflection on there and she just like blows her back. It's like the whole time it's a buildup of like, oh, you're understanding how powerful each person is. Again, it's like a superhero movie in some regards. It's just like, it's a lot of things rolled into one, but it isn't just rolled into one just for the flat genre elements. You know what I mean? There is like a parallels to a lot of stuff, addiction or anything like that. I don't know. I probably won't, but I wrote like 3 or 4 paragraphs on this film whenever I was about to watch them. I was like, I had something in my mind. I'm like trying to write it down. Obviously, I totally forgot to read any of that before this podcast, but I don't know if I will, but I may publish something. I think I was basically why this film succeeded or like how it succeeded when it maybe, it could have went horribly wrong. Well, I may or may not publish that. I don't know.
No, go ahead. Well, I just get more of that out in the universe.
It was a stream of conscious for me, so I need to see if it actually works.
Because the same reasons why it's so funny. Because the more I think about it, there's so many similar themes, even though they're different stories. There's so many exactly the same themes between Haunting of Hill House and Dr. Sleep, and so it's obvious that the director is passionate about those things and finds them to be the true, horrors or anyway.
What scare him,
right?
At least.
Right, and like anyway. I really hope. I'm bummed that it didn't have a bigger opening weekend because I want to see more of this out there. I want to see more of this kind of horror. Like it's not saying we can't have.
Our Cujo remake or something.
Yeah, it's not saying we can't have like the fun,
well, I think it's
ridiculous stuff, but
having horror that's not devoted to killer clowns or Michael Myers or kind of these kind of
it's crazy though because they shouldn't market. I mean, this has like basically vampire. It's a vampire movie. Well, they don't. It was cool they didn't reveal it, but it's like, how do you? What should I don't know what they should have done.
Well, part of my point was that the thing I think this will do is. So you'll still see money put behind horror films that are like it. Because that one had like a $30-40 million budget, which for horror is pretty high. I'm just saying that was a pretty high concept movie, The Killer Clown. You can sell the hell out of that in trailers and merch.
Yeah.
With Halloween Kills or whatever, they're probably spending more on those than they have on Halloween films in the past. But you got a bona fide, hit with the Halloween 2018. You can do that. I'm just saying the reaction to this film may discourage people from making a horror film that has all these, parallels to personal demons and all this stuff.
I don't know about that.
Has a budget over $40 million.
I think it would inspire more. I don't know.
Because if they're like, if we drop $50 million on a Shining sequel and we can't make the money back.
But there's so many factors with every film. It's release date again, and it might be this.
But the other thing is,
and also how many Academy Award-winning movies were not blockbuster hits?
I'm just saying though.
So I'm not saying this one will actually win an Academy Award. But I am saying.
My point is when they look at the box office performance, the way studios look at when they're looking to greenlight something or say yay or nay, they bucket together and like, what is this like? Nope, that didn't do well, so we can't do this. It's like where people take the wrong message from Deadpool or Logan or the Joker movie or whatever. They take the wrong message and greenlight a lot of movies that are terrible. They also then don't greenlight movies because they take the wrong lesson from movies that don't hit their potential at the box office.
Well, so we'll just have to get more reviews out there and talk about how great this, because every single person on Facebook who I've seen say saw Dr. Sleep had only positive things to say about it. One of whom notoriously loves exploitation and gore and gratuitous everything.
William.
So obviously. But that says something though. I mean, obviously he's capable of enjoying different kinds of whatever, but point being, even people who historically really enjoy the gratuitous stuff also really enjoy this movie and are raving about it in a good way. And so that gives me hope. I mean, to your point, like, I don't know, my hope is that by the end of its run in theaters, it'll have recouped more money than expected, just because people will give it good reviews.
I think that what the unfortunate will happen is I think just the trend it's on now is Netflix and whoever looks and like, we can, Netflix, HBO, they'll make stuff in this wheelhouse in this vein, but maybe not a $50 million movie from a major studio going forward. I mean, you never know. Stuff is cyclical.
It's just such a weird movie. This is on its own unique thing.
I mean, I can't...
Being a sequel to that, even just the format, like, the structure of it, like, it works, but it's nothing you want to replicate because it could have very easily fallen apart. You know what I mean? Like, this film just does so much. I don't think there's anybody that's going to try to replicate this in any way, because it's such a different beast, and that's why I like it. Aside from just being a sequel to The Shining, which makes its own unique thing. Like, it's a weird thing.
So, any other thoughts before we wrap up?
Go see it.
Yeah.
It's good.
Or if you do like it, make sure you tell our people you think would be interested in it, because it's a movie I think that does benefit from being shown in the theaters and seeing on the big screen. Yeah, and encouraging other filmmakers to follow suit and explore similar themes in terms of the real life stuff, because you can do both at the same time, which this director, I keep forgetting his name, Mike Flanagan. I mean, he's done. There's plenty of movies out there doing that. It's just you don't see them at the scale of this. Yeah. So the idea is hopefully, but we'll see. Like hopefully more people get to go down that road and encourage them to do more movies like that. Yeah. Yeah. So. All right. So if you're enjoying the podcast, do us a huge favor and leave a review that helps other people find the podcast. On iTunes or whatever podcast app you're using. We always enjoy seeing feedback on the comments on YouTube or wherever you're listening to or watching the podcast. You can always find everything we're doing at hbtvs.com. Find links to all of our social media, all that stuff. And then, Julie, for you, if people want to follow what you're doing on Facebook, they can search for Julie Strebel-Actress. Also, One Must Fall. He mentioned iTunes, and I was like, yeah. So One Must Fall, the movie that I was in, and we filmed it in 2018, and it was released this year at festivals and stuff. So we finally have distribution lined up, and it is now available for pre-order on iTunes, and it will be released on December 3rd. So, and they did, as a part of the distribution deal or whatever, they did change it. So instead of one O-N-E must fall, it is the number one must fall. So it'll be the very first one to pop up. But and I think too, on other platforms, I saw somebody say they ordered on Amazon. I guess it'll be available everywhere because it's. But
I guess the iTunes thing is important because if it hits that top, if it keeps rising, then more people will see that and they'll get it. So that's kind of seems like that's the key place to pre-order it. If anyone because of those charts. Yeah, if anyone's heard of One Must Fall and had any interest in possessing a copy of it, please go to iTunes and pre-order it, because that'd be super cool. And the director Antonio Pantoja has promised that if we hit the top, I think he's saying number one. He said if it hits number one on the pre-order. If it hits number one, he will get a tattoo on his butt, and he will. I know Antonio. Where is it? Where's it at now? Or where was it? I thought I saw him post something. It was top 20 or something? Top 22 or something. Yeah, last time I looked it was at 22. Which is still pretty, Sorry. It's getting there, but. Yeah, so anyway, so that's that.
Then you can also see Julie in the short film Evil Ahead that we made back in October. So you can check that out on our YouTube or Facebook or Instagram accounts. But yeah, so that'll wrap up this episode of the House by Vasor podcast. Thanks for listening.